Yeah, so we're just going to have flexible opening statements, everybody. And James is working on his audio. So yeah, it's just let's see. Do we have the topic up? Oh, sorry, everybody. My camera is very blurry. Looks like, but um, not sure how I can solve that problem. Yeah, James is working on his audio right now. Everybody, he's muted for the moment, but he'll get up and running. Hey James, are you cool if we just start with the opening statements? I know Gavin was going to go last time. He was taking the positive. Okay, so actually, Gavin, why don't you go ahead with your opening? James, what did we agree upon? Did you want 10 minutes or um, 10, 10 flexible minutes? Okay, so Gavin, I'm going to put on the timer for 10 minutes. Whenever you're ready to go, just go ahead. We'll do 10
Sure.
minutes. You can
Yeah,
ask me
sure.
questions or whatever, but
Yeah.
yeah, 10 minutes.
Yeah, good as gold. Thanks, Cloud. I'm not too hung up about the time, but if you could just give me maybe a 5 minute warning and then a 2 minute warning, Cloud, and definitely tell me when 10 minutes is up because I've certainly talked for too long by then. Um, so so I'm a Christian, so I'm going to take the affirmative that the resurrection was an historical event. What I'm going to try to do, I'm not sure how successful I'll be, but I've got a lot of shout outs to do as well. I don't know if I'm going to get them in, but I'm going to try and argue for the resurrection, not via the Bible, not via the traditional route. I'm going to try and use sources from outside of the Bible. So the first thing, um, the first thing is that there are six, maybe seven. There's definitely six uncontested or non-contentious facts that are universally agreed by theist and non-theist New Testament scholars. When I say non-theist, I'm talking about people like Gerd Ludemann, Bart Ehrman, that kind of thing. Um, so these are the six facts that they all agree on. Number one is that Jesus was crucified and died. Number two, his disciples and followers had experiences that they believed were appearances of the physical and bodily Jesus Christ. Number three, as a result, overnight, the disciples were transformed. Literally, they went from frightened, scared individuals to bold, heroic men who had an actual disdain for death. Actually, I'll put bold, heroic men and women because Jesus had a lot of women followers and disciples. Um, these men and women, they consistently put themselves in danger and in the firing line for their Lord. Number four, the disciples, they preached the resurrected Jesus uh, quite early after his resurrection. It was only a matter of a few months. There's sort of no kind of timeline that I can quote from, but it was a short time. So from his crucifixion, resurrection, then ascension, and then when the disciples started preaching wasn't a long time at all. Number five, James, the brother of Jesus, he becomes a believer in his brother after after Jesus appears to him. And James, because James just thought his brother was a bit of a weirdo, I think. But anyway, James is like instantly transformed into a believer, and he goes on to become the leader of the biggest church in the ancient Near East, and that was in Jerusalem. There's also the dramatic conversion of Saul of Tarsus, who was a murderous Pharisee who couldn't wait to get his hands on Christians, and he had an encounter with Christ on the Damascus Road. Excuse my pronunciation. And here's a last thing that is universally agreed on, but it doesn't seem to get any attention. And I'm a bit stumped as to why. But number seven is that there's actually no official refutation, yes, of the resurrection by those who had the most to gain by dead Jesus, and that was the Pharisees and the Jewish chief priests. Um, they remained silent. They didn't say anything about, oh no, this resurrection is a hoax. It's just a made up story. They never issued anything official. There is something called the forged acts of Pilate, and Eusebius writes about uh, this this forged document in his work called Histories. That was 302 AD, so it was very, very late. that this so-called acts of Pilate sort of surfaced, and it was never taken seriously. But that was the only document that sort of spoke out against the resurrection, saying it wasn't true. So there's a lot of quotes here, but just for time's sake, I'm not going to quote them all. German scholar Gavin says Jesus' death was as a consequence of crucifixion is indisputable. Dr. Bart Ehrman says one of the most certain facts of history is that Jesus was crucified on the orders of the Roman prefect of Judea, Pontius Pilate. What else we got? Paula F. Fredrickson, who's actually a Jew and a scholar of religious studies at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. She states the single most solid fact about Jesus' life is his death. He was executed by the Roman prefect Pilate on or around Passover in the manner the Romans reserved, particularly for political insurrections, namely death by crucifixion. What do we got? Okay, again, Bart Ehrman says, and look, Bart Ehrman is not a Christian whatsoever. We know that. I've got a lot of respect for Bart. I really like him. He's a great scholar. He's just on the other team, so what can you do? But Bart says we can say with complete certainty that some of his disciples at some later time insisted that he soon appeared to them, convincing them that he'd been raised from the dead. This is an interesting quote from Paula F. Fredrickson. She says, I know in their own terms what they saw was the risen Jesus. I'm not saying that they really did see the raised Jesus. I wasn't there, she says. But she does say this, I don't know what they saw, but I do know as an historian, she's speaking as a professional historian, that they must have seen something. They must have seen something. New Testament scholar E.P. Sanders, like Colonel Sanders from KFC. He states, I'm trying to inject a bit of humor because it's a bit dry, this bit, that Jesus's followers and later Paul had resurrection experiences is, in my judgment, a fact. He says a fact. What the reality was that gave rise to these experiences, he just says, I do not know. He says, I do not know. And I've just taken that excerpt from his book called The Historical Figure of Jesus. So there's quite a bit of independent and hostile sources that confirm, one, the existence of Jesus, because he's got to be an historical figure to actually be crucified and died. So it's pretty clear that most people, well, virtually everybody's saying he was an historical figure. And John Dominic Crossan notes that even if no Christians or no followers of Jesus wrote anything about him for the first 200 years of Christianity, we'd still know the basic facts about his life from the hostile sources. And the hostile sources were the Roman historian Tacitus, Jewish historian Josephus, the Babylonian Talmud.
Sorry, Gavin. I'm not used to being the timekeeper. So you have 2 minutes and 15 seconds left on that 10 minutes.
Okay, thanks. Lucian Bar, Mara Sarapin, Celsus Salus, Julian Africanus. These names that I've mentioned, these are not Christians. They're hostile to Christianity. I'll just finish with what Josephus wrote. Now, Josephus in his Antiquities, 18.33, was written 94 AD. But his version has been interpolated because the Christians have had a hand in that to try and make it sound a lot better than what the actual original was. But I've got an original here, and this is from a Syrian source that was uncovered in the 10th century AD. Now, I'll just read it quickly, and then I'll finish and give up my time to Cloud. Um, Josephus wrote, remember, Josephus is not a friend of Christians. He says, at this time there was a wise man who was called Jesus, and his conduct was good. And he was known to be virtuous, and many people from among the Jews and the other nations became his disciples. Pilate condemned him to be crucified and to die. And those who had become his disciples did not abandon his discipleship. They reported that they had appeared to them after his crucifixion and that he was alive. Accordingly, he was perhaps the Messiah, concerning whom the prophets had accounted wonders. And that's quoted in Agapios Kitab al Anwan. I'm butchering the pronunciation here, which is a Syrian document which translates to the Book of Tithe. And with that, I'll give up the rest of my time and yield it to Cloud. Thanks. I can hear you, James. I can hear you.
Damn. Okay. All right, everybody. So James is going to continue working on that. I'm going to go into my opening, which is going to be a little bit free form. I want to engage with you a little bit, Gavin, on this.
Sure, yeah. Understand.
So we've all heard these debates. Like there's a plethora of debates out there about the resurrection, whether it's true or false, or whether we have good reason to believe that it occurred. And all the ones I've seen, they kind of go in a similar way, and it can be kind of frustrating that we harp on the same things over and over. I wanted to approach this a little bit differently with you, Gavin. And so you agree that historical fact is different from other type of fact, right? Like when someone says it's a fact that this thing occurred based on empirical evidence, the way historians, conduct their research, it's and their claims related to that, it has a different meaning. You recognize that, right?
Yes, sure.
Okay. So just wanted to make that clear, because I think a lot of times people look to equivocate the word fact between historical claims and like empirical claims, as if it has the same weight. So I want to get some grounding on some of the definitions for the terms we're using here as well. So when we talk about resurrection, the claim behind resurrection is that the Christian concept of the God of the Bible brought Jesus back to life after he had actually been dead, right? It's not a claim that Jesus was just seen alive and he was thought to be dead. When you're saying resurrection, you're saying that Jesus was brought back to life from death by the Christian God of the Bible, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And he interacted with his followers. I'm sure he had lunch with them, picnics, that kind of thing. Spoke
Picnic.
to them. Yeah,
Sure.
spoke to them for 40 days, and then he was out of there.
Okay, so now you're using these minimal facts type of approach to this, to your belief that Jesus was raised from the dead by God. Do you accept this position that Jesus being raised by God is the most likely thing, the most likely reasonable explanation for
Yeah.
alleged?
I understand what you're saying, Cloud, and I accept it, but I only accept it based on the evidence.
Sure. Well,
The
no.
evidence is pretty strong.
Well, yeah, no, I know that that's what you're going. I'm just saying that that's the case. So, in order for that to be a reasonable explanation that can be accepted, would you agree that it's got to be the possibility for that to be the case has to be established? Like, for instance, that the Christian God actually
Absolutely.
exists.
Oh,
So
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, so right, yeah, so the Christian God must exist in order to have been able to raise Jesus from the dead, right? That's fair.
Yes, you're right. Yes, yes, 100%.
So if that's a premise that the Christian God must exist for the resurrection of Jesus to be even a possibility, then don't you agree that you have to establish the soundness of that premise before you can reach the conclusion?
Not really, because and I appreciate, and I'm not decrying what you're saying. I appreciate your point of view, but we're not kind of having a debate. Does God exist? It's kind of we're assuming that He does exist. That we're trying to focus on whether the resurrection was an actual historical fact or
Oh,
not.
no, no, no. I never agreed to that because I don't believe that God exists. I mean, we're talking
Right.
about that the resurrection, as we agreed on the definition of, actually occurred, which would mean that a premise for the resurrection to happen would be, so like if the syllogism in syllogistic form, it would be premise one: if the Christian God of the Bible exists and desired to raise Jesus from the dead, they would have. Premise
Yeah.
two: the
Yeah.
Christian God of the Bible exists and desired to raise Jesus from the dead. Therefore, conclusion: the Christian God of the Bible raised Jesus from the dead. But premise two there, it needs to be confirmed to be sound, which means that you have to substantiate the claim that the God actually exists.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you.
so, and this is why I said I wanted to approach it in a different way, because I've seen debates in the past, like for instance with William Lane Craig, like he'll constantly do this. Oh, well, tonight we're not having a discussion about whether or not the God exists. Tonight the debate question is whether or not Jesus was resurrected, and he
Yes.
just
Yeah.
avoids that premise. And no,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, look, I understand. Look, I'm right with you. I'm with you 100%. So, just for the sake of time and to appease the audience, let's focus on, well, does God actually exist for the resurrection to take place? Are you happy with that?
I mean, for a moment, I was just going to ask you a question, and since it's still my time, I was just going to
Oh
ask
yeah,
you.
sure. Oh, sorry
Um,
about that.
no, no,
I
no.
forgot it was your opening 10 minutes.
No, 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 no worries. I said I wanted it to be open and I wanted to engage with you, so it's no
Yeah.
problem at all. I'm
Sorry.
just curious, what do you use? What makes you believe that this God exists? Does the resurrection claims itself? Does that whole thing, does that provide you with the evidence that the God exists?
Partly, Cloud. But just quickly, I think personally, it's impossible to to. I think it's impossible. I've got to frame this right. Just have to bear with me. I think it's impossible for the statement God does not exist. God does not exist. I think it's impossible for that to be valid, because if somebody says that or somebody believes that, then then for it to be true, that person must be omniscient. They must know everything possible there is to know about our planet, the solar system. Or,
I got you. I got you.
they've searched everywhere and they
One
haven't
I've
found
heard
God.
you. I've heard you go into this with Skylar a little bit.
I want to
So yeah,
forgive me for just so sorry for cutting in. I just wanted to mention that if anybody has any questions, please fire them into the live chat and then we'll ask them during the Q&A. Thanks, guys.
Sure, yeah. Go for it, Cloud.
so yeah. So do you think it's a binary position then, that it can either it can only be shown in two different propositional forms, that the God exists or the God does not exist? You don't believe that somebody can just not be convinced?
Well, I'm basically using the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy as my resource, and
For
it,
what?
it for the existence of God.
Okay, so but what
It's in
specifically, like the proposition
it's
that God does not exist, you're talking about like a hard atheist position, right?
it doesn't have to be hard atheist, but the
Well,
link,
you said
Cloud, is in the video. Sorry?
you're talking about all knowledge. You were saying that someone
Yeah.
would have to know everything. So you're referring to
Yes.
knowledge, which would be the claim that the hard atheism, which that someone is claiming to know that the God doesn't exist, right?
Mm.
Because I'm not claiming that here.
Sure.
How about burden of proof? Do you care about that at all? Because I mean, you're the one who has the belief, and then you're also using the existence of the God as a premise for the possibility that Jesus was resurrected.
Yeah.
And so I'm just asking, how do you get there? And then you're saying that the opposite can't be shown, but you're not explaining how you get to the positive claim. You're just saying that you don't
Sure.
believe
Yeah.
someone who
Sure, I understand.
has a propositional
Yeah.
negative to that they're
Yeah.
correct.
Sure. Sure, I understand. I'm with you 100%. Um, the in the video description, there's a link to Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and it was actually written by Paul Draper, who's not a Christian. He's a professor of philosophy at the University of, I might be butchering this, but Purdue or something in the States. But he wrote a really nice piece on atheism, agnosticism, and that sort of thing. So I believe personally myself that the biblical God, the God of the Bible, exists, and I base my belief um, on all of the available data that I've been able to read and research so far. And there's still a ton more. There's still a ton more to go through. So that's why I believe it.
Okay, so like anything specifically? I mean, you're just convinced of that, right?
Well, I'm convinced by the evidence, Cloud. I'm convinced by the evidence. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. And
So,
the
so, so,
evidence.
so, so, sorry. So when I say evidence, I mean evidence inside the Bible, but also outside the Bible.
So like the evidence for the resurrection, that's what, is that part of it?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's all rolled into one.
So do you realize that it's circular to use the resurrection as evidence for the claim because it contains one of the premises in the conclusion?
I don't think it's circular
Sorry, one
because
of the premises
I've,
contains.
I, yeah, I've tried very hard not to quote from the Bible in my position affirming that the resurrection is a true and historical account. Yeah, I've tried not to use the Bible because then I can easily be, accused of using circular reasoning. I've tried to use external evidence outside of the Bible, and especially hostile witnesses. People that were no friends of Christianity or Jesus Christ.
Okay, so what is your best evidence beside that you say all the evidence, all the available data that you've come across?
Yes.
What why should somebody else believe? Okay, so well, I still have a little bit of time left. Let me go into this. Basically, when we're looking at historical claims,
Yes.
there's a lot of assumption there. That's why when someone says something is a historical fact, it's different from saying it's like an empirical fact that we can observe right now, readily in front of us, right? Has
Sure.
different
Yeah.
value. And so when somebody claims that something happened in the past, it's either you can believe it or not believe it, but it's not really about belief. It's about accepting that something could have happened a certain way. And
Mm.
the only reason I see to believe that something happened a specific way is for some pragmatic value, for some use that they could have for it with some agenda, right? Every time I see apologists make arguments for the resurrection actually occurring, there's also some sort of proselytization that comes into like part of the debate. Like it's obvious that they're biased
Sure.
to Jesus rising from the dead, and to me that seems like they have an agenda for turning this fact into a harder fact than it actually is. Like, why can't we just look back at history and say these people claimed these things? Like lots of
Yeah.
people have claimed lots of things in religious contexts throughout history, whether
Yep.
Christianity or something else. Even right now, we can see cult leaders amassing an incredible number of followers who will claim
Yep.
that they have seen this person perform miracles or whatever. And you can go and talk to
Yep.
them right now. You're talking
Yep.
about claims from history
Yep.
about possible supernatural things that occurred, but why do we need to believe that as a fact? Why should anybody believe that as a fact, as aside from these things were claimed?
Okay. Can I answer that?
Oh yeah, please.
Because I don't want to cut into your time.
Oh no, my time's up now, but we've both been going back and forth. I don't really care.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Okay. Sure. Um, one. This is just one of the reasons I believe um, that the God of the Bible exists, and hence the resurrection was an historical fact. Is that the textual criticism regarding the Gospels, it's very, very strong. And compared to what we accept as fact, like the writings of Plato, or ah,
What do you
word,
mean? What do you mean we accept
Plato
those
and
as
Homer.
fact?
Well, well,
We don't
in
need to accept those as fact. Like there's uncertainty about the existence of Socrates and whoever, whatever, right? It's just
sure,
these writings came from this person probably,
sure,
and this is
sure,
the evidence we have that this person may have existed. I don't think anyone is staking their life or anything on the basis that Plato existed, right? It's just this is the person that we can most associate to these writings,
sure,
and
yeah, sure,
to some degree. Like you can talk
yeah,
about the nuance of it, but there's not as much of a desire for calling it a hard fact, right?
right, right, right. But nevertheless, us in Western culture, it's pretty. We accept the writings of Plato and Homer pretty much unquestionably, but if we apply the same contextual criticism that we apply to Homer and Plato's writings to the Gospels, um, then the Gospels come out like miles ahead of the writings of Plato and Homer as far as the accuracy and the historicity, and reliability and all that sort of thing. And I'll just quickly mention this. When a modern day historian looks at an ancient text, there's three things that's always foremost in their mind, and this helps them to determine how authentic or how accurate this ancient text is. Number one is how many copies of the original autograph exist, or even if the original autograph does exist. In the case of the Gospels, it doesn't, but so is in the case of Plato and Homer. How large is the time gap between the actual event described in the ancient document and the earliest copy that is available, and how significant are the differences between the copies? Because that's quite important.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and yeah, and look, modern if I say ancient historians, it sounds like they're in a wheelchair and almost dead. But modern scholars of ancient literature, they have a lot more confidence in the reconstruction of an ancient document when there's lots of copies to work with. Lots of copies. The time gap between the actual event that occurred
Right,
and
right, right, right,
the
right.
first available copy is quite short, and the differences between all the copies, differences between all the ancient copies, is relatively insignificant. So
Yeah, but
you know,
Gavin, when you have a religious document that's
yes,
sourced from religiously biased individuals who have been making these claims, um,
yes,
just because something is close to an event, that doesn't give it uh, any. There's nothing solid there to assume that supernatural events occurred because of that within those claims. Like I said, you can go and talk to a number of people who follow religious cult leaders currently who are
yep,
still alive, that
yeah,
they'll make these claims, and you're right there at the source. Like, is that
yeah.
any more reason to believe them that these things happened?
Um, well, when a modern historians looking at ancient documents, they whether it's a religious document or a secular document makes no bones to them. They have no skin in the game whatsoever, whether they're atheist or Christian or whatever flavor you want to call them. They have no skin in the game as far as that's concerned. All they're
Eh,
concerned about.
I'm not sure I
No, no,
believe
I'm
that.
serious. I'm serious. I'm serious.
They
All
would
I'm
like they
concerned
would
about.
like to not have
Yeah,
they would like it to be thought that they don't have any skin in the game, and I think they'd
yeah,
probably like
yeah,
to believe that they don't have any skin in
yeah,
the game.
yeah. Look.
But when you see these people come into these debates so commonly, like James White, William Lane Craig, um, Mike Licona, right? Like there's always some level of proselytization in these debates. I mean, that right there up
Absolutely.
front shows their bias.
Absolutely.
They
Absolutely. And
definitely have skin in the game. Like it's beyond their skin to them, right? The skin isn't even a significant enough term. Like for them, it's their
yeah,
eternal soul that's in the game, right?
yeah, sure. Look, I hear what you're saying. I'm assuming that these people who are trying to authenticate these documents don't have any skin in the game. But I might be wrong, and we're kind of in the area of speculation here. But I'm trying to be as even-handed as I can. So. Uh, an historian who's looking at an ancient document and deciding how authentic it is or how accurate it is, how reliable it is. Um, for instance, with the works of Homer and Plato, historians have got quite a high degree of confidence that they've reconstructed the works of Homer and Plato quite accurately. Now, I'll give you an example. There's 219 ancient copies of Plato's writings. There's 2,300 copies of Homer's um, uh, not original. Earliest copies. There's no originals. But for the New Testament, there's just
All right.
5,700 manuscript
I,
copies,
I've
and the
I've heard this
original
before,
book below.
Gavin. I've heard that before, and I gotta say, I don't. I'm not convinced by how many copies of something there are. All that shows to me is that there was a group of people that were convinced by something and
Sure,
they wanted it to be more reproduced. That's it.
sure.
Like the copies for something, just in sheer number alone, basing it off that metric doesn't give me any reason to accept that the claims within the copies of those stories are true at all.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. What about the time gap between an actual event and the first available copies of the original autograph?
I
Do you
mean,
think has some significance?
sure. I mean, I think it can. I think that it can, depending on the context. So, for instance, if something is removed 10 years from an event, then you could say, oh, well, the person, you know, eh, that it depends on how far it was spread, right? Like if
Sure.
this was spread word of mouth, like all the way across like large areas through a number of different people, then the
Yeah.
time of the time that it was closer to the event doesn't, I don't think, really matters as much. Like you can assume that it got through less people, but I don't think
Mm,
you have
mm,
much to base that assumption on. You know what I mean?
mm.
um there's
Yeah.
still,
Sure.
it's still
I
not claimed to
understand.
be from the witnesses, right? For most of these, I think for
I
the
understand.
synoptics, right? And then from that, when you look at the differences even in the synoptics, right? It's quite, there's quite a lot of difference there. Now, I'm not a historian, of course,
Sure. Yeah.
and so when
Sure.
people look to that sort of thing, they're like, oh, well, there's not as much difference here as there is over there. But that doesn't mean that these differences aren't significant. And to me,
Sure.
when I read the Gospels, I'm looking at a lot of differences there that I find to be questionable.
Sure.
Um, but even
Absolutely.
but that doesn't mean they aren't true. But
Sure.
all I'm saying is that when supernatural claims are made, even within that, and we don't have
Yeah.
any stronger evidence for supernatural claims, um, and I just I get what you're saying. I've heard this all before. Um, I don't find the reason why that's convincing to you, unless you have
Okay.
some sort of religious bias. That's why I'm asking, you know, why can't you just accept these things that they were claimed to have happened, but they're not really sound? Why have you come to the resurrection as the most likely case? And that being said, I kind of wanted to move to some specific points. So I don't want this to be
Sure.
too just general.
Sure.
So I'm okay
Yeah.
to engage on specific points in some of these things.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and maybe I can learn a little something here too. I'm open to
Sure.
that.
Sure.
But
Sure.
one of the
Sure.
things I found strange was, okay, who confirmed that Jesus was dead?
Probably the Roman soldiers who pierced his side with a spear. They
Well,
were
no,
pretty they were
only
pretty
one gospel,
ruthless.
and only one gospel in John, which is the furthest removed, the latest, and not a synoptic gospel. In that, it is claimed that his side was pierced. It's never claimed that in any of the other ones.
Right.
Um, So you'd have to just rely upon one specific gospel that's not even a synoptic gospel, that's the latest. And there are other things in John that are questionable about um, seeming like trying to make people become convinced that this actually happened. Like
Right.
towards the end of John, where they said that, you know, we got this. We talked to the disciple, and we know that it's true that this happened. You know, it's like they keep putting on this, like, oh yeah, no, this for sure happened, like
Mm,
like
mm.
they needed to.
Yeah.
Um, so the reason why I asked that is because I find it an interesting claim, and I looked for this. I don't know, like I couldn't really find much on it because I wanted to know how Jesus's death was verified. Because I mean, throughout history, there have obviously been like numerous cases of false death reports, or people were pronounced dead incorrectly,
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
They weren't really
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
great at it. Now,
Yeah.
when I look biblically, only in one gospel, I think it was in Mark, well, that's the earliest, right? So
Mm,
um, I think in Mark it said that, you know, when Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate to take Jesus's body, um, Pilate was surprised that Jesus was already dead. Now
mm.
that stands out. He was surprised that Jesus was already dead. That, you know,
Yep.
why was he surprised that he was already dead? You know, so that says something else. So it wasn't like that kind of conflicts with John for me, that the centurion pierced Jesus's side and like, oh, he bled out, and like that would be more, oh, like, well, why wouldn't they just tell Pilate, yeah, he was pierced in the side and everything poured out, and he's like, oh, okay, that makes sense, that's why he's dead. But no,
Mm.
the earliest gospel, Pilate was surprised that Jesus was already dead. He got it
Yeah.
from the centurion, but in none of the other gospels does it say anybody confirming this. Like that's the only one that the centurion is in. And then it's weird
Sure.
that Joseph of Arimathea, who was a secret disciple of Jesus, just, you know, he's allowed to take Jesus's body. It's like Jesus was
Yeah.
on the cross. They thought he was dead from being on the cross, you know, because he slumped.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He got tired, passed out, whatever. And then
Yeah.
Joseph, his secret disciple, was able to take over his body himself. I don't see
Yeah.
anything solid here that he was actually confirmed to have died.
Um, I do. I do. When water gushes out of your side from your pericardial sac and your pleural cavity, you have to be really, really dead for that to happen.
No, Gavin. Again, that was from just one gospel. That was just
Sure.
from John. None of the other ones claim that, and the other ones, what it said in the other ones actually kind of conflicts with that. Like I said, in my minds anyway. And like I said,
Mm,
in John, there are a couple of things that seem like they're trying to push people to believe that this happened. Like that
mm,
could be
mm.
an addition later because people were like, well, maybe he wasn't dead. I don't know. Like he was up there for 6 hours and then he slumped, and
Yeah.
then Joseph of Arimathea was able to just take his body away.
Yeah. 6 hours is an exceedingly short amount of time to die by crucifixion. I have to grant that. That's for sure. But I think you're kind of referring to the swoon theory that Jesus was not really dead.
I mean,
Is that right?
well, I think it's a possibility. Like we're looking for explanations here, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And
Sure.
so, as
Sure.
opposed to he was resurrected from the dead by a supernatural force, I mean, we know
Sure.
that throughout history there have been false claims of death, false reports of death,
Absolutely.
um,
Absolutely.
and people weren't really that good at it necessarily, you know, at that time. It wasn't a significant amount of time, the way most of
Yeah.
the Gospels described it and the Synoptics.
Yeah. Yeah.
um a secret disciple of his was able to take over control of his body.
Yeah.
When he is alleged to have appeared to some people, they saw the wounds,
Hmm.
right? So there are some things connecting this where it's, yeah, definitely a possibility that he actually hadn't died. I mean,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
to me, right, so I'm asking you
Yep.
where you got to this, to such a confident belief in the claim that Jesus was actually dead. Like, where can
Okay. Okay.
I get
Yep.
more information about that?
Sure. Sure. Well, look, because I work in medicine, Cloud. Um, I, if it was possible, and of course it can't be possible, but if it was possible to do like a modern post mortem, post sorry post mortem on the body of Jesus. The cause of death would have been threefold. One would have been cardiomyopathy, the other one would have been asphyxiation, and the other one would have been the name escapes me. Loss of blood by death. You die by loss of blood. It'll come to me anyway. But there was three causes involved in his death: massive loss of blood, asphyxiation, and Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. Takotsubo cardiomyopathy literally translated means a broken heart. That's all it means.
Yeah, no, I looked that up. Like I tried to find any sort of information about this, and I saw that there were some, doctors who were thinking about how Jesus may have died and saying that
Yeah,
this is something that could have happened. Um, but we don't see anything really. I mean, it's speculation on how it could have happened. And yeah, he could have died, sure, but we're not looking at that. We're looking at what possibilities are there that Jesus was seen after his alleged death. He was alleged to have died, wasn't
sure,
confirmed dead by any sound source. Um,
sure.
what could have been an option? Well, we can say that there was some supernatural being who we don't have any sound substantiation for, and some supernatural event happened, or we can look at some things that we know happen, which are people don't always die when other people think they're dead, especially in the ancient world.
Yeah, sure, sure. The swoon theory, Jesus not actually being really dead, almost dead, but not really dead. That's done the rounds ad nauseum, and it's pretty much debunked. And the
Well,
reason is,
how has it been debunked?
well, it's debunked by the Roman centurion piercing Jesus' side with a spear.
That's only in
And
one gospel. That's in John, the latest gospel, the most removed. It's not a synoptic gospel, and it looks like it was potentially added to add some sort of finite um, claim about Jesus dying, actually dying, and then things that are said in other gospels don't really cohere with that, even though they're earlier.
sure, sure. But,
I wouldn't say
uh,
that that's debunked. I'd say that that's another story that says something different, and
well, yeah,
you're
yeah.
basing it off of that, which
No, no, no. I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, and I've read a lot of literature on the swoon theory, and believe me, it's well and truly been debunked.
well,
And the
I'm not just gonna believe you, Gavin. Sorry about
Oh,
that.
sure, sure,
Um,
sure, sure. No,
uh,
that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. But can I also say, one of the reasons why it's been debunked, and it's a good reason too, is that if Jesus was almost dead, but not dead, but not dead, but almost dead, um, there's no way he would have appeared to his followers and disciples 3 days after being almost dead, in tip-top physical form with only nail marks in his hands and his feet, and looking like nothing had ever happened to him. He he
what do
probably
you
would have died.
what do you
He
mean
probably would
almost?
have died.
What do you mean almost dead? And where does it say it looked like nothing had ever happened to him?
Well, when he appeared after 3 days
Uh-huh.
after he was resurrected, he appeared alive and well. He had nail marks in his hands where the nails were, and nail marks in his feet where the nails were. But other than that, he was fine. Physically, he was fine. But then, he had a
He didn't have any marks in his hands. I
he
could
did.
have sworn
He
that
did.
he did, because, for instance, in one of the gospels it says that, okay, so, and this is a different take where one of the disciples wasn't there, and then
Thomas.
when he appeared to the rest of the disciples after that, they went and told the disciple that wasn't there, and he said, oh well, I'm not going to believe unless I see his hands and I see that he actually had these wounds, and then he
Yeah,
did.
yeah. Thomas, doubting
Thomas, yeah,
Thomas.
doubting Thomas, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't jive. That's not consistent with your claim that he did have wounds in his hands.
Well, I didn't claim he didn't have wounds in his hands and his feet. I did claim he had wounds in his hands and his feet. But apart from the nail marks in his hands and his feet, physically he was fine. He was absolutely fine.
Sure. Well, I mean, yeah, people come close to death and then they revive after a few days. I mean, how close to death was he? I mean, you say he was close to death, But how do you know that? How do you know how close to death he was? He went through an
No, no,
ordeal.
no. I'm not saying he was close to death, Cloud. I'm saying he was dead.
No, you're saying I'm sorry. You're saying he was dead, but then you're
Yeah,
also saying that if he was just close to death when it comes to, what I'm offering here,
sure,
then
yeah.
he wouldn't be, well, he wouldn't be dead. And those are the type of embellishments that occur with stories over time as well. Like, people are amazed that somebody can survive such an ordeal when they thought somebody was dead. Then they're like, oh, wow, you're not dead, you're alive and well. Well, through translation, what does alive and well actually mean? Well, it can mean that the person is just alive and they're surprised that they're even alive, right? Like, I think it, it's difficult because it seems like you're taking some of these things that are claimed and giving such a specific weight to them. And again, that just comes with, it seems to betray this underlying bias, this underlying belief in you, that you want
Well,
this to be the case. I
no. The reason why I say Jesus was dead, was seriously dead, is because 1 Corinthians chapter 15, textual criticism dates it to circa AD 30 to 35. So it's pretty much at the time of the crucifixion.
What do you mean pretty much at the time?
Yeah.
At the time.
Somewhere between AD 30 and AD 35. So that's when that creed was written by Paul.
Okay, so we're going back to, I'm sorry, I thought you said something else. So
No.
we're going back to, it was close in time somewhat, according to these textual criticisms, to the event that occurred, and
Yeah.
therefore,
The crucifixion and the resurrection, yeah, happened sometime between AD 30 and AD 35.
oh, right, sure.
And textual,
What's your point with that? I'm sorry.
well, I'm just saying textual criticism dates um, 1 Corinthians chapter 15. That was penned by probably a scribe, or could have been penned by Paul himself, because he was he was a learned man. But it's been dated to what they say, circa AD 30 to 35.
Yeah, no, okay, yeah. So what's your point there?
Well, Paul's saying that he, he was seriously dead and he was resurrected,
Well,
and
no,
that's
yeah,
where
no,
our
that's
hope
another
is.
person. No, yeah, these people apparently were under the impression that he was dead, and I'm asking how that was confirmed. Though a lot of people were under the impression that people were dead in the past, but they didn't confirm it. Like, they had heard somebody was dead. The
Mm,
word was spread that he was dead.
yeah,
And look, I'm not trying to die on this hill here that Jesus wasn't actually dead. I'm just offering, you know,
sure,
other possibilities that, seem to me to precede
sure.
supernatural causation
Yeah,
in
I understand.
likelihood, because we
I
know this
understand.
has happened and we can't
Yeah,
confirm the other two have
yeah.
happened. So
Yeah, look, 100%. I understand, Cloud. I understand, and this question of was Jesus really dead? That comes under the heading of the swoon theory, and it's been debated ad nauseum, and the result is, yeah, he must have been dead.
you're believing the result that he must have been dead, and
Well,
that's
this
what
is
I'm asking for. I'm asking for confirmation of that. I'm asking for any sort of
well, this
substantiation
is
of that
yeah,
claim.
this is the opinion of medical practitioners, and it's in the description in my links that I've got in the description.
No,
So
I've read what medical practitioners have had to say about it, and
yeah,
from what I saw, it's just a speculation on the ways that Jesus could have died, not saying that they have confirmed and it is the case that Jesus was absolutely dead, or that
hmm
even, most likely. I mean, it's just that there are ways he could have died, and especially when it comes to the claim in John that his side was pierced, which is only in
yeah,
that gospel.
sure. Well, the links I've got there from medical practitioners who have said when he was taken down from that cross, he must have been dead, given the scourging he had prior to being crucified, then the actual crucifixion, and then dying of asphyxiation and Takotsubo cardiomyopathy.
The thing I have a problem with this is that they don't even know how bad it was. Like when you actually read the Gospels, and that's what you have there is,
Yeah.
That he was hit, with a stick by the centurions before.
More than that.
Then in most of the Gospels, he didn't even have to carry his own cross, right, to the place.
Yeah.
And then he was,
Yeah.
crucified. And then in only one of the Gospels, he was stabbed. But anyway, I don't want to keep harping on the same thing here. I'm just
The
saying.
scourging. Yeah, can I just make a point about the scourging, Cloud? He was
Sure.
scourged by a cat o' nine tails, which is a whip that had pieces of bone and sharp stone embedded in it as well, and that was designed to rip flesh off the back of people. And it was not uncommon for people that have been scourged by Roman soldiers for their bones to be showing, their backs to be lacerated to smithereens. So Christ lost a lot of blood even before he got nailed up.
Okay, and where was that said specifically?
It's throughout the Gospels that Pilate ordered
The cat of nine
cat
tails is throughout
o'
the
nine.
Gospels.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they actually say cat o' nine tails, but when they say whipped, that's what the Roman soldiers used to use.
Because I know in one it was saying like he was hit with a stick. Anyway, not really that important. You see, this is all kind of like speculation based on very minimal information. And that's just one reason I have a problem with it is, so I guess another point I wanted to make and get to in this discussion was, for someone not being a historian, why should they accept that this is true just based on what certain historians say about it? Because not all historians agree that it's a fact that Jesus was resurrected, right? That's the claim that is being made here by you and others arguing for the resurrection. You're basing it off facts that historians have agreed are facts. And then you're saying the next fact is that he was resurrected by God. So if you're basing it on historical facts, but then historians all agree, and you say, you even come with the argument that historians agree on X, historians agree on Y, but historians don't agree. Like even Mike Lacona, whoever, will say themselves that, you can't get the miracle, you can't get the supernatural thing, even though he argues still for it. Historians agree that you can't do that. You can't get to that supernatural from just the history. So why can you? Why are you saying that it's a historical fact if you're referring to historians, and historians agree that it's not a historical fact?
Because I'm going to the experts who are not even Christians. They're either Jews or just agnostic, and what they're saying is that Christ's followers and disciples saw what they believed was the risen Christ.
Hey James, is your audio back yet?
Yes, it is. Hopefully, let me know,
James,
folks, if there's an echo.
can you hear us?
No,
Can you hear my chair? Is it
sounds
that
like
my
it's just
chair?
you and me, Cloud.
Did my squeaky chair? It's been creeping in?
Okay. I haven't been paying close attention to James at all, so I don't know, or the chat even. So I don't know.
Yeah, I can't see the chat. I can't see the chat.
Well,
how he's feeling about.
This has been a really good conversation.
Sure.
It's been deep, and it's definitely
Hey James,
been.
I guess if you need something to change, you can email. Yeah, you're completely muted.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah, I can't hear you at all.
Maybe now it should work now. I think.
Okay, there you are.
Let's see.
I can hear you, James.
I know that
I can hear you, James.
So sorry, folks. I know that there's somewhat of an echo, and it might just be because I'm in a study room at the library. So if the echo is not as bad as it used to be, because like 20 minutes ago in the stream, the echo was like, whoa, it sounds like you are from another planet. If it's better than that, let me know. If it's still that bad, then I've got to try something else. Okay, Twisted Hippie says the echo is fine. So it sounds like now we're just picking up the echo from the room, and I fixed the like recycling of the sound. So anyway, we can move to Q&A. This has been a terrific, honestly, I've really enjoyed this debate. I love that you guys have kind of gotten down on the mat and touched on the practical issues of like different primary sources, the earliness of the sources, whether that's relevant to whether or not the authors, whether or not earliness of sources or the amount of manuscripts are evidence for the author's truthfulness. All that stuff is like really interesting. So this has been a really good conversation, and we will now go to these questions that we have. So thanks so much. Patreon priority question. Thanks for your question, Brian. He says, does Gavin believe the minimum facts when it comes to supporting the Mormon faith regarding Joseph Smith and his followers? How you like them apples, Gavin?
I don't like them apples. Forget Joseph Smith.
Gotcha. It's as simple as that. Take that, Brian. Okay, we will now move into the other questions. So thanks for your Patreon support, Brian. And if this is your first time here today, consider hitting that subscribe button as we've got a lot more debates coming up, folks. We are very excited, especially about this one that I'm about to show you. So a lot of you maybe haven't heard yet, but if you haven't, oh baby, this is going to be a big one. Next month, we are very excited to host Inspiring Philosophy and Matt Dillahunty as they debate whether or not there are good reasons to believe in God's existence. So that one is going to be a big one, and it's going to be live and in person. So this isn't going to be like from, Mike Jones sitting there with a glass of scotch in his living room. This is going to be Mike Jones sipping a glass of scotch in person with Matt Dillahunty and myself. So that'll be a lot of fun. And with that, sweet questions.
That'll be that'll be that'll be one for the ages, James.
It will. We honestly, I think it's going to be one of the bigger ones we've ever hosted. So very
Yeah.
exciting stuff. I'm visiting family back home in Wisconsin right now, by the way. That's why I don't have the blazer. I feel so naked without the blazer. And why I'm also in this echoey study room at my public library here in good old Oshkosh, Wisconsin. So next question.
Oshkosh rules.
Thank you for that support, Gavin. Todd L, thanks for your question. He said, for Gavin, who wrote the Bible? And how are they different from J.R.R. Tolkien?
Who wrote the Bible?
That's right.
40 odd different authors. The Bible's a collection of 60 books. That's pretty common knowledge. And there was 40 odd different authors.
Depending on the Bible.
I guess so. Yeah. I'm kind of thinking about New International Version, NASB, that kind of thing. Just your common garden variety type Bibles.
That's funny.
Keep tripping over my words. What's wrong with me?
You sound perfect, Gavin.
You're human, Gavin. You're human. It's fine.
Enchanting
I think I'm nervous. Oh, actually, before I get, I've got to say this. Major respect for Cloud, because Cloud's been nothing but respectful and reasonable in this debate. And I know debates can get pretty heated, don't we, James?
Yes, we do.
But Cloud's been awesome, eh? So yeah. And in New Zealand, we think.
I appreciate that, Gavin. I just wanted to say, people, don't be so mean to Gavin. He's not a bad guy. All right, it's okay. We're all just things here, and I'm sorry if I let anybody down. This isn't my forte when it comes to discussing theology or things of that nature. So I found this as a learning opportunity, and everybody can have fun, in the chat with their discussion as well. So just wanted to say that. Thanks, Gavin.
No, you're welcome, my friend. I know that in the sort of brief discourse we had between each other before this debate, I just knew you were a nice guy and you weren't going to be unreasonable and all that sort of thing. It's so nice, eh? Because here's the thing: when we're debating each other's topics. We're not debating the person, the individual person. We're just debating their ideas. That's
right,
it.
Yeah.
You got
Yeah.
it.
So anyway, I just wanted to say that because it's been a real pleasure. And if you want to do anything else, feel free to call me. I'm more than happy to debate with you.
Terrific. And Dayton White, thanks for your question. They said, question for Gavin, is there evidence for your position or only claims?
No, there's lots of evidence. There's heaps, and a lot of it is in the description, in the video description that I emailed to you. So people want to check out what I've said, and just go to the links and check it out for themselves.
You got it. Thank you very much. And Iron Charioteer, glad to see your question pop into the live chat. They said, ask Gavin, does he think Philo of Alexandria influenced Paul's writings? Philo constructs the angel Jesus in his writings. Paul also says he never met a physical Jesus. What do you think, Gavin?
No is the answer.
Gotcha. Thank you. Lee Tay, thanks for your question. They said, does Gavin think the minimal facts argument offers strong support to Mormon claims?
We've already had that one, James.
Slightly different.
Well, again, forget Joseph Smith.
Gotcha. Next up, Lee Tay, thanks for your question. Actually, you're kind of right. Does Gavin think that even if we accept Jesus' resurrection by the God of the Bible that as the most likely explanation, does he also think it more likely true than not true?
What?
They said, does Gavin think that even if we accept Jesus' resurrection by the God of the
Yes.
Bible as the most likely explanation, does he also think that it
Yes.
is more likely true than not true? I'm confused myself by that. Lee
It's more.
Trey,
Look,
sorry,
look,
but
look. But based on the available data that we have today, then it's more likely that the resurrection occurred, as was an historical event, an actual event. It's more likely.
How did you determine that it was more likely, though?
Based on the contextual criticism cloud, and also based on the external evidence that I've got besides the
Well,
Bible.
no, no.
Besides the Bible.
To be clear, like what I mean is, so when you say based on that, I still kind of want to dig deeper. You know what I mean? I want to,
Sure,
like, what do you mean
sure.
based on that? How have you come to that conclusion based on that? Because the historians don't agree with you, right?
I would. Yeah, I'm not sure about the historians don't agree with me.
Because
Um,
you're basing it on like these historical facts, but you're making that next jump, and you're saying, well, based on this, but see that was one of the things I was trying to get into, is that when you're appealing to the historians on so many things, but then you remove that trust in the historical consensus when you jump to this next step. Like if you're trusting them on all these things and their expertise, then how are you getting to the most likely claim is true, jumping from what they have to say when they don't agree with that?
well, well, the the people that wrote about Christ existing and his resurrection, or that his disciples believed they saw him resurrected, outside of the Bible, there's 42 accounts of different people writing that kind of thing. Um, so they're not in the Bible, and that's why I tried to stay away from the Bible, so I couldn't be accused of using circular sort of reasoning. So these are people that some of them are really hostile towards Christianity, um, and they would be the last people that would want to write something actually good about Christianity. But they just gave the bare facts. Yes, Christ existed. Yes, he was put to death under Pontius Pilate. Yes, he was crucified. Yes, he was dead as. And then 3 days after being dead as, like seriously dead, his disciples and followers claimed that he appeared to them.
Yeah, a
So
number of these are just I'm sorry, a number of these are just reports about what is alleged to have happened, right? Or what people are saying has happened, right? They're not writing themselves that this is what happened. They're writing that this is what is claimed to have happened.
Yeah, exactly. They're recording what the eyewitnesses relayed to them. Does that make sense?
Um, I mean, in some cases, it's claimed that eyewitnesses are recording this, right? Like, but I from what I understand, there the it gets pretty far removed from eyewitness when you refer to these texts.
We're going
Well,
to, we can give you a quick chance to respond, Gavin, but we want to get to, it's got to be a short and
sure.
pithy one because we have to get
Yeah.
to more questions.
Okay. Short and pithy is that um, the disciple Matthew was an eyewitness. The disciple John was an eyewitness. John Mark was a spiritual son of Peter, the disciple, who was an eyewitness, and Luke was a friend and traveling companion of Paul, who encountered Christ on the road to Damascus.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. Next up, Phil Bunny. Thanks for your question. They said, do the panelists think that feminism has gone too far, and where could they see a debate about that? So, Phil Bunny will be debating. We're still finalizing the exact date, but we do have a debate on whether or not feminism has gone too far. What are your thoughts on that, as that'll be coming up on the channel soon? Do you guys have an
What
opinion
does
on that one?
what position does Phil hold, James?
He, I'm not sure, but just to see if you have an opinion on this, do you think it's gone too far or not?
Yes.
Okay, well, what I think is that these terms box us in to certain concepts in a very tribalistic way in the way people use them, and I think it's more nuanced than that. So feminism is great for a number of reasons. Also, some people use the uh, label of feminism in a very detrimental way when it comes to a larger framing of society or interacting with individuals. I don't think it's that simple. I think it's much more nuanced than that. And I think that asking questions that box it in that way is just lending to that sort of um, unnuanced way of describing it. I think it's good to have discussions about these things, but I think it's kind of difficult to just oversimplify, to generalize and simplify things like that.
And I would agree with Cloud that the best way to come to some kind of resolution, or at least an understanding of both sides, is to have the subject placed out there for public discourse, and then it can be debated in a reasonable and respectful way, just the way like Cloud has been today.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. Next up and last question of all, we have one from Iron Charioteer asking Gavin how long Jesus was in the tomb for.
3 days.
Thank you very much. And with that, we appreciate your questions. Actually, well, hold on. We'll get one more in from Hindu John. First time I had seen Hindu John in the live chat. Thanks for your question. He said, "For Gavin, why did women go to put spices on the body already in the tomb when that is usually done before the body is laid to rest?"
Because it was Passover.
Gotcha.
Well,
Thank you.
in a couple of the gospels, I think they do put spices on the body before as well. So
Thank you very much for your questions, folks. It's been a fun time. If it's your first time here, consider hitting that subscribe button, as I mentioned. And we do have a Patreon. So even if you're like, nah, I don't really, not into that subscribing thing, but if you want to check out the, forgive me, Discord is what I meant to say. We have a Patreon too, but more importantly, I was trying to get at the Discord, which we were very thankful that Math Pig and Tony Designs were so kind to help us with. That Discord link is in the description. And so if you want to hang out with the Discord, I will be chilling, peeking in and out as I'm traveling. But thanks so much, most of all, though, to our speakers for being here today, for spending their time with us. We really appreciate you guys being here. Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you so much, James, and big round of applause for you, Cloud. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, thanks, Gavin. Thanks, James. I just wanted to say to everybody, you know, I could probably in the future, if I have a debate, structure my time a little bit better and focus my points a little better. Didn't get to everything I wanted to say here, but we had some technical difficulties. That's okay. I'm just trying to be open and learn and have good conversations. I appreciate you, James. Appreciate you, Gavin, and everybody in the chat too. You're freaking beautiful.
You bet.
Well said. Bravo,
And
bravo, bravo.
yeah, thank you as well for everybody's patience with our technical difficulty at the start, and thanks for Cloud for kind of taking over as both moderator and guest speaker today. So we appreciate everybody being here. We hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, James. God bless.